My name is Norma McLean, and I'm 34 years old. I never imagined the day I buried my mother would also be the day my entire life split in half, clean, sharp, like glass under a hammer. Mom always said life has a twisted sense of timing. I just didn't expect it to be this cruel. The church was already filling when I arrived. Teachers from my school, neighbors who had known my mother for decades, Amanda with her husband and their kids. Everyone hugged me with that soft, careful touch people use when they're afraid you'll break. I felt fragile enough that maybe they were right. But I didn't cry. Not yet. My body was still running on the last fumes of sleepless nights, hospital monitors, and the hollow routine of preparing a funeral for the only person in this world who had never betrayed me. As people settled into the pews, I scanned the room for one person. Jeremy, my boyfriend of 3.5 years. The man I had lived with. The man who used to tell me my laugh was his favorite sound, before he decided there were more valuable things to chase. He wasn't there yet, of course. He arrived halfway through the first hymn, sliding into the back row in a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. He didn't come up to me. He didn't hug me. He didn't even look my way. My heart squeezed, but I swallowed it. Today was about Mom, not him. The pastor spoke. Amanda read a poem through tears. Then it was my turn. I stood at the front, the podium cold beneath my fingers. The sanctuary seemed to hold its breath as I adjusted the microphone. My mother, I began, was the strongest woman I've ever known. She worked 2 jobs for years, secretary during the day, cleaning offices at night, so my sister and I could grow up never feeling how heavy the world can really be. My voice wavered. I pushed through. She taught me kindness, taught me how to be soft without being weak. She taught me loyalty, real loyalty, the kind that doesn't change depending on who's watching or who's whispering. A subtle ripple moved through the pews. I didn't look at the back row. I didn't need to. I could feel Jeremy shifting. I was only 5 minutes in when I saw movement. Jeremy stood up, straightened his jacket, and walked out. Mid-eulogy, the entire church turned to watch him leave. Some faces showed shock, others disgust. Amanda's jaw clenched so tightly she looked like she might snap a tooth. For a second, I thought I might faint. But the thing about heartbreak is, it can't kill you. It just feels like it wants to. So I kept reading. I spoke about Mom's quiet humor, her love for holiday dinners, the way she'd hum while washing dishes. I thanked everyone for coming. I made it through her favorite verse. But something inside me cracked. At the burial site, the sky darkened. A weak drizzle started gathering in my hair like cold fingertips. I stood beside Mom's coffin, watching as the earth swallowed what remained of her physical form. Jeremy wasn't there, not even pretending. He hadn't even bothered to come to the graveside service. By the time we reached the reception afterward, I felt numb. My body moved through the motions, greeting, thanking, hugging, but my mind was stuck in that empty seat at the back of the church. I was standing near the buffet table when my phone buzzed. Jeremy, I'm in the parking lot. We need to talk now. My stomach twisted. I excused myself and stepped outside. He was leaning against his sleek black car, holding a manila envelope, annoyed, impatient. Like my grief was a traffic jam he had to sit through. Sorry to interrupt your day, he said, dripping sarcasm, but I need you to sign these. He shoved the envelope toward me. Inside were separation papers, a full agreement already drafted by his lawyer, asset lists, timelines, signatures highlighted in yellow. You couldn't wait? My voice came out small, fragile. Jeremy, my mom... It's better to get everything out now, he cut in. Clear the air. No more pretending. We both know this relationship hasn't been working. My fingers tightened around the papers. The print swam. Today? Of all days? You're emotional anyway, he said with a shrug. Might as well deal with everything at once. Everything inside me went silent. Not angry, not tearful, just empty. I lifted my eyes to his. Who is she? Jeremy blinked. What? The woman you've been seeing. What's her name? His jaw twitched. Tiffany, he finally muttered. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. 8 months of late-night work calls, expensive dinners, charged to our joint card, and unfamiliar perfumes on his shirts. Not a big deal. My mother dying, inconvenient. My heart breaking. Overshadowed by legal paperwork he couldn't wait 24 hours to shove at me. Something inside me hardened. Fine, I whispered. Give me a pen. He looked surprised. You're not going to fight me on this? Why would I said, voice steady. You clearly don't want to be with me. I leaned against his car and signed every single page, line after line, initial after initial. No questions, no hesitation. His eyebrows pulled together, like he was almost disappointed I wasn't begging. "Okay," he said, snapping the file shut. "I'll have my lawyer file this Monday. Start packing your things. You'll need to move out by the end of the month." I nodded, even though my hands were shaking. He got into his car and drove away. I stood alone in the parking lot, the cold air biting my cheeks, clutching nothing but the ghost of a life I had just signed away. I had no idea then that this moment wasn't the end. It was the spark, the beginning of something my mother had already seen coming, and the beginning of Jeremy's downfall. If you'd asked me 2 years ago whether Jeremy Collins would become the man who served me separation papers at my mother's funeral, I would have laughed. Back then, I still saw him through the soft focus lens of hope. Maybe that's the cruel thing about hindsight. It shows you every red flag you ignored, in high definition. Jeremy and I met at a friend's birthday dinner. He was charming, confident, charismatic in a way that felt effortless. He had that polished, wealthy glow, nice watch, tailored blazer, a smile that told you he didn't worry about bills or rent or anything ordinary. When he learned I was an elementary school teacher, he didn't flinch, or so I thought. He leaned in and said, "Kids are lucky to have someone like you." I believed him. I believed so many things. Our first year together was good, light, sweet. He brought me flowers to school sometimes. He held my hand like I was fragile glass he wanted to keep safe. His laugh made my entire chest warm. Then he introduced me to his family. Everything changed after that. It started with a dinner at his parents' house in their spotless, designer-decorated home, granite countertops, abstract art, a chandelier that probably cost as much as my car. Jeremy's mother, Vivian, greeted me with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh," she said, looking me up and down. "You're the teacher." Not Norma, not Jeremy's girlfriend. Just the teacher. His father, Richard, didn't bother softening anything. "So," he said midway through dinner, "you plan on staying in that line of work long term?" "I love teaching," I replied. "I wouldn't trade it for anything." He nodded with that smug politeness wealthy men use when they think you're wasting your life. "Well, everyone finds fulfillment differently, I suppose." Jeremy said nothing. His younger sister, Chloe, who lived on Instagram and wore labels like armor, chimed in, "You could always go into administration. They make more money. You'd work fewer hours, too." I smiled politely. I prefer being in the classroom. She blinked, confused, like the concept of choosing purpose over money personally offended her. And then the ghost entered the conversation. Tiffany, his ex-girlfriend. His mother brought her up casually, slicing through prime rib like she wasn't cutting through my confidence. "You know, Tiffany's just made partner at the firm. Wonderful girl. Came from an excellent family. Shame she and Jeremy couldn't work things out." Jeremy shifted in his chair, clearing his throat. "We've moved on, Mom." Vivian smiled. "Well, some women just fit into our world more naturally. You understand." I understood perfectly. In their eyes, I would always be temporary. As our relationship progressed, the pressure intensified. When we moved in together, his parents insisted we sign a cohabitation agreement, their version of a prenup. "It protects both of you," they said, but it protected only him. It listed assets that were already his, future inheritances, the condo his father co-signed for. It even detailed the conditions of separation, down to which dishes were considered his property. "You're okay with this, right?" Jeremy said as he slid the folder across the table. He framed it as love, as responsibility, as practicality. "It's just smart," he insisted, "and my parents will feel better knowing everything is clear." I read the agreement 3 times. It was heavily stacked in his favor, but I signed it anyway, because I loved him, because I thought relationships were about compromise, because Mom always taught me to give people the benefit of the doubt. She didn't know then, or maybe she did, that I was compromising so much of myself I barely recognized the girl in the mirror. The cracks began small. Jeremy would make jokes about my income. "You know, if you made just a little more, we could take a real vacation." Or, "My colleague's girlfriend is a lawyer. They just bought a house in Lakeview. Maybe someday." I'd smile through it, laugh when he laughed, pretend the sting didn't linger. His family's jabs grew sharper. During a holiday dinner, Richard said, "If you're serious about the future, you should think about advancing your career. Staying stagnant isn't a good look." His mother added, "Or at least take some finance classes, just to elevate yourself." Jeremy sat beside them, silent. His silence cut deeper than their words. Then came the signs. Late nights at the office, client meetings that didn't add up, receipts in his pockets, expensive dinners at places he'd never taken me, a hotel charge on our credit card. When I confronted him gently, he brushed it off. Networking, he said. Team dinners. You're being paranoid. But he'd begun doing something else too, something worse. He started comparing me to her. To Tiffany. Her career is exploding, he told me once. She's really going places. I stared at him. Why are we talking about your ex? He shrugged. I'm just saying, she's ambitious. As if ambition was the price of love. Around this time, Mom's health began slipping. Heart disease. Doctor visits. Procedures. Nights at the hospital. I was exhausted, juggling worry and school and a home where my boyfriend's affection felt like it was being rationed to me drop by drop. Every time I stayed with Mom overnight, Jeremy would sigh. Your sister can handle some of it, can't she? She's handling everything she can, I said. Mom needs both of us. It just feels like your focus is divided. Divided. He said that while my mother was fighting to stay alive, Mom never said anything, but she saw what he was doing to me. She saw the way my shoulders curled inward when his name popped up on my phone. She saw how drained I was. One night, when I thought she was asleep, she whispered, "You deserve someone who doesn't just stand beside you when it's convenient." Her voice was thin, but her certainty wasn't. I think she already knew what I refused to face. Everything escalated at lightning speed. Jeremy's late nights became routine. His phone barely left his hand. He locked it now. He showered before letting me near him. He left the room to take calls. The final proof came in the form of a florist receipt curled in his coat pocket. Tiffany, the note read, beautiful as always. I didn't confront him. Not then. Because Mom was getting worse. Because my heart couldn't survive losing both of them at once. Because denial is a warm blanket in a cold room. But I knew. And he knew I knew. We lived like strangers after that. Sleeping beside each other, breathing the same air, sharing nothing. And then Mom died. And Jeremy made his choice clear. He didn't just fall out of love with me. He outgrew me. Or maybe he thought money and status made him bigger, and I was something small he needed to shed. He had no idea how much bigger I was about to become. The morning after I signed the separation papers, the morning after I buried my mother, I woke up in the quiet of Jeremy's condo feeling like someone else's shadow. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was accusing. Every corner of that home suddenly felt foreign. Like it belonged to a life I never truly fit into. Jeremy had already left for work, or for Tiffany, or for whatever version of his life didn't include me. It didn't matter anymore. Amanda picked me up for the will reading that afternoon. She didn't ask about Jeremy. One look at me told her everything she needed to know. The lawyer's office was tucked into a row of old brick buildings. Simple, unpolished, the opposite of the glossy world Jeremy's family lived in. Inside smelled like paper, lemon cleaner, and the faint echo of whispered grief. Frank, Mom's estate lawyer, was an older man with soft eyes and a gentleness that made me want to cry again. He'd known our mother for years. "I'm so sorry for your loss," he said quietly. "Helen was one of the sharpest women I ever worked with." Sharp. Yes. Mom was quiet, humble, never flashy, but sharp. We sat at the long conference table, Amanda, her husband Mark, and me. My hands were cold, knotted together in my lap. Frank opened a thick folder. "Your mother updated her will 3 months ago," he began. "She was very deliberate in her arrangements. This might come as a surprise." I barely heard the next part. "Real estate, 3 properties. Combined value, 1.1 million. I blinked. The numbers didn't make sense in my head. I knew Mom saved religiously, clipped coupons, reused gift bags, wore the same winter coat for 8 years. But $1 million? Amanda covered her mouth, eyes wide and wet. Frank continued. Additionally, Helen had investment accounts, mutual funds, tech stocks, bonds, some cryptocurrency she purchased years ago. His tone was calm, clinical. I felt like I was floating. The combined value of these accounts is approximately $2.7 million. This will also be split equally between you both. My fingers trembled. Amanda reached for my hand. Norma. Oh my God. Frank wasn't finished. There are also several bank accounts totaling approximately $400,000 and a life insurance policy valued at $500,000. I felt lightheaded. My mother, the woman who apologized for buying branded cereal, had quietly built an empire. Altogether, Frank said gently, your mother's estate is valued at about $4.7 million. After taxes and fees, each of you will receive roughly $2.1 million. The air left my lungs. 2.1 million. My mother had left me the kind of safety she never had. The kind of security Jeremy worshipped in other people, but never thought I'd possess. Frank's voice softened. There's more. He pulled out a sealed envelope with my name written in Mom's delicate handwriting. It broke me, completely. I took it with shaking hands and opened it slowly. My dearest Norma, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm sorry. But I need you to know something clearly. I saw everything. I saw how exhausted you were. I saw how he made you feel small. I saw you shrinking your dreams so he could feel taller. And sweetheart, that is not love. That is a cage. A sob escaped me. Frank pretended not to notice. I don't know exactly what Jeremy has done, but I know the look in your eyes when you're hurting. And I know what a woman in love is willing to ignore. I couldn't protect your heart from breaking, but I could protect your future. Every asset I have is structured so it belongs to you alone. No one, not a partner, not a judge, can claim a single dollar. I made sure of it. You are free now, my love. Free to build a life that doesn't require you to apologize for who you are. Be bold, be loud, be yourself, and don't ever shrink again. All my love. Always. Mom. There are moments when your heart breaks and heals at the same time. That letter was one of them. I cried into my palms while Amanda held me, both of us shaking from the weight of love and grief colliding all at once. When I finally looked up, Frank cleared his throat softly. There's one more thing Mrs. McLean left. He slid another envelope across the table, this one with Jeremy's name on it. In her instructions, she requested this be given to him after your separation becomes final. I stared at the envelope. Mom had known. She'd seen the cracks long before I admitted them. And she had prepared for this moment. For me, the rest of the meeting passed in a haze. Paperwork, signatures, timelines, everything methodical and slow, like the world was giving me space to catch up. When Amanda drove me home, she hesitated before pulling into the driveway. What are you going to do? She asked softly. The question should have broken me, but instead I felt something warm begin to rise in my chest. A tiny flame, barely there, but real. I'm going to leave, I whispered, and I'm going to give Jeremy that letter. Amanda nodded, a fierce look in her eyes. And then I stared at the condo, at the windows where Jeremy and I once planned a future he clearly didn't want with me. And then, I said, I start over. But I had no idea then, not truly, just how spectacularly everything was about to turn. For both of us, leaving Jeremy's condo wasn't as dramatic as I once imagined it would be. There was no screaming, no slamming doors, no explosive confrontation. Just me, quietly folding my clothes into boxes while the late afternoon light hit the walls of a home that had never really been mine. I left the furniture, the decorations, the kitchenware, anything that felt tied to his world. I didn't want souvenirs from a life where I'd been treated like a placeholder. I packed only what belonged to me. My books, my clothes, my laptop, the quilt Mom made me when I went to college. And Mom's letters, both of them. The one she'd written to me and the other addressed to Jeremy. The one that would change everything. For the next 2 weeks, Jeremy texted me constantly, but not about us. Not asking how I was coping with the grief. Not apologizing for the funeral stunt. Not repentant. No. His messages were purely transactional. Jeremy, have you packed? Jeremy, I need you out by the 28th, remember? Jeremy, Tiffany wants to start renovating ASAP. Jeremy, this is taking too long. Every ding of my phone chipped away another piece of the girl who once thought love meant patience. By the time I moved into my short-term rental, a tiny furnished place with creaky floors, I felt lighter. Raw, but lighter. Amanda helped me carry boxes up the narrow stairs. When we finished, she leaned her shoulder against mine. He's going to regret everything, she murmured. I didn't reply then. I didn't have to. The day the separation officially finalized, my lawyer emailed me the confirmation. I stared at the notification for a long time. It was done. I was no longer legally tied to the man who served me papers at my mother's funeral. I took a deep breath and picked up the envelope with Jeremy's name. Mom's handwriting was steady and neat, beautiful in a way that made my heart ache. I drove to the condo. Jeremy's car was in the garage, and I could hear music inside, something upbeat, something expensive sounding. I knocked. He opened the door, wearing a fitted navy shirt, looking like he'd just finished getting ready for a date. His jaw tightened when he saw me. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "We're done, Norma. You can't just—" "I'm here to give you this." I held the envelope out. He frowned, annoyed and curious, tearing it open immediately. I turned away, taking a few steps back, because I wanted to hear it. I wanted to feel the moment he realized the fortune he threw away. There was silence. Then, "What is this?" His voice shifted, no longer sharp, but shaky. He read faster. I heard the envelope crinkle. He inhaled sharply. And then, "2 million? Your mom left you over $2 million? No, wait, more than that? This can't be real." I turned back toward him. "It's real. But your mom, she didn't have how. She planned her entire life," I said softly. "She saved. She invested. She worked harder than anyone you've ever met." He looked at the letter again, eyes wide, disbelief flattening his features. Then desperation crept in. "And the assets are in trusts? Locked? Protected from spouses?" His voice dropped. "Norma, why would she—" "Because she saw everything." My words were calm, steady, true. He closed his eyes. "Oh my God. Oh my God. I pushed for that agreement. I insisted on it. And now—" His hand went to his forehead. "She protected everything from me." I nodded. "The same smart decision your parents encouraged," I added quietly. "Remember that?" Jeremy stared at me like the ground beneath him was shifting. "You knew," he accused suddenly. "When you signed the separation papers, you must have known." "I didn't," I corrected. "Not when I signed. Not when you walked out of the funeral. Not when you rushed everything through." His eyes widened even more. "So I divorced a millionaire?" I didn't flinch. "No, Jeremy. You left someone who never needed your money to begin with. You just didn't know it." His Adam's apple bobbed. I could almost see the reality sinking in. He had rushed the separation to prevent me from touching his assets. Instead, he cut himself off from mine. And Tiffany, his perfect, ambitious mistress, was about to learn he no longer had a wealthy girlfriend. He stepped toward me, voice breaking. "Norma, listen. I made mistakes. I know that. But we can work this out. We were good together before everything got stressful, before I stopped fitting the image you wanted." "That's not fair," he whispered. "It's honest," I corrected. He reached for my arm. I stepped back. "Please," he said, voice cracking for the first time since I'd known him. "We can start over. You have money now. We can build something." There it was. Not "I miss you," not "I'm sorry I hurt you," not "I'm ashamed of how I treated you." Just, "You have money now." I shook my head. "You left me long before I left you," I said softly. "You just finally put it on paper." His face twisted, anger fighting with panic. "It's not fair," he snapped suddenly. "I supported you for years. You insulted my career. You cheated for 8 months. You walked out of my mother's funeral." He froze. "You can't expect me to pretend none of that happened," I added. Jeremy's voice dropped to a whisper. "She said in the letter that I never deserved you." I swallowed hard. She was right. He staggered back like I'd physically pushed him. For a moment, he looked like a man losing not just a girlfriend, but the future he thought he was entitled to. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindictive. I just felt done. Completely done. I turned away. Behind me, I heard him choke out, "Norma, please don't go." But I kept walking. I walked down the steps, across the parking lot, into the cold air that felt sharper than anything inside that condo ever did. As I reached my car, I realized something. For the first time in years, the weight in my chest was gone. I wasn't losing anything. I was finally free to build something new, something mine. And Jeremy? He had just begun to understand what he'd thrown away. After I walked away from Jeremy's condo, I expected some kind of emotional collapse, a breakdown, a rush of heartbreak, something dramatic, something cinematic. But instead, what I felt was silence, relief, a quiet, steady hum inside my chest I hadn't felt in years. It was like stepping out of a thick fog and realizing the world had shape and color again. I spent the next few days moving into my small rental, organizing my new space, and letting my body relearn what peace felt like. Amanda checked on me constantly, her calls a lifeline I didn't know I needed. Every time she asked if I missed him, I gave her the same answer. I miss who I thought he was. Not the man who served me papers in a parking lot, not the man who walked out of my mother's funeral, not the man who chose Tiffany the moment I became an inconvenience. Just the illusion. But illusions dissolve, truth remains. Word travels fast in our town. Within a week, Jeremy's parents reached out to Amanda, who immediately forwarded me the messages. Vivian wanted to talk over coffee. Richard wanted to clear up misunderstandings. Chloe sent a 3-sentence apology, filled with more emojis than sincerity. I ignored all of them. Then the messages escalated. Vivian, Jeremy is devastated. Vivian, you should have told him about the inheritance. Vivian, it's not too late to reconsider things. I laughed, out loud, alone in my apartment. These people, who once judged me for every breath I took, who made me feel small every time I walked into a room, were suddenly interested because I was worth something in dollars. Not character, not loyalty, not the way I stood by Jeremy through every high and low. Money. Only money. Amanda said, Mom would have roasted them alive, and for the first time in weeks, I laughed without feeling guilty. Tiffany dumped Jeremy. That part wasn't surprising. Apparently, she found out that the breakup didn't come with the financial upgrade she had anticipated. According to a friend of a friend, Tiffany left him with the same icy precision he once used on me. He tried to save face online, posting motivational quotes about growth and evolving past mistakes. But everyone in his circle already knew the truth. Gossip blooms fastest in wealthy communities. People whispered, colleagues talked, clients murmured about his poor form at the funeral. Jeremy had always been obsessed with maintaining an image. Now that image had fractures he couldn't smooth over. Funny how karma doesn't need invitations. A week later, I received an unexpected visit. It was late afternoon at the small tutoring center I'd begun volunteering at, a quiet place with mismatched chairs, faded posters, and children who made me believe in magic again. I was packing up worksheets when the door opened and Jeremy stepped inside. He looked smaller. Not physically, but in presence. His confidence was replaced with hesitation. Norma, he said quietly. I didn't move. What are you doing here? I'm not here to ask for money, he said quickly. I swear, and I'm not here to get you back. I know that's not happening. He exhaled shakily. I'm just here to apologize. I folded my arms. All right, I'm listening. He swallowed hard, like his pride was a bitter pill. I hurt you, he said, over and over. I treated you like your life was small because I didn't understand the value of anything that wasn't tied to money or status, and I'm ashamed of that. Silence stretched between us. I know I can't fix it, he said, but you deserve someone who stood by you the way you stood by everyone in your life. You deserve someone who actually loved you. My throat tightened, not for him, for the version of me who once believed he did love her. Thank you for saying that, I murmured. He nodded slowly. I hope you find someone who sees your worth from the beginning. I think I already have, I said softly. Something in his expression flickered. Sadness, acceptance, maybe both. He nodded once more, then left. No drama, no shouting, no begging. Just a quiet, final goodbye. The next chapter of my life didn't start with a grand gesture. It started with small choices. I used part of my inheritance to create something meaningful. A scholarship fund in my mother's name for low-income students who dreamed of becoming teachers. A community literacy center filled with books, after-school programs, and volunteer tutors. A place where kids felt safe, supported, and seen. For the first time in my life, I wasn't pouring from an empty cup. I was building something, in my name, in Mom's name, something that mattered. About 2 months after the inheritance settled, I met Lucas. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't trying to impress me. He didn't have sharp suits or expensive watches. He was an accountant who adored his job, loved volunteering, and had a quiet tenderness that felt like calm after a storm. He asked about my day and actually listened. He laughed at my terrible jokes. He remembered my coffee order. He didn't once ask me what I earned. He didn't know about the inheritance, not yet. I wanted him to meet me first. Me, the teacher who stayed late with struggling kids, the daughter who held her mother's hand through every hardship, the woman who rebuilt herself from the ashes of a broken relationship. One afternoon, as we walked through the neighborhood, he looked at me and said, You know, Norma, you're one of the strongest people I've ever met. And my heart didn't twist with fear. It opened. A few weeks later, I visited Mom's grave. I brought her favorite flowers, white stargazer lilies, and sat on the cool stone bench nearby. Mom, I whispered, you were right about everything. I told her about Jeremy's letter, about the tutoring center, about Lucas, about how I finally felt like myself again. I'm okay, I said softly. Better than okay. The wind moved gently through the trees, brushing my cheek